certainly Japan could possibly afford to ramp up its military spending.
Yes.
It could assemble nuclear weapons fairly rapidly if it needed to.
Yes.
But you don't believe, one, it doesn't have the will. Can you elaborate on the will factor in Japan and also just in terms of the long-term economic prospects for Japan? What are even the possibilities? In other words, what are its power possibilities?
Well, first of all, I don't see any reason why Japan can't grow at the 2 to 4% range. Japan is already one of the wealthiest countries in the world. It's one of the wealthiest countries on a per capita basis. Japan is a society where the streets are clean, there's no crime, it is an attractive place to live, and many Japanese compare themselves to the Baltic countries. They like the idea, or the Nordic countries. They like the idea of seeing themselves as autonomous. They like the idea of seeing themselves as not participating in some of the least appealing features of great power competition. I will also point out that more Japanese died in the firebombing of Tokyo in January and February of 1945 than died at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So we tend to focus on the nuclear explosions, but there are still millions of Japanese who lived through World War II, and they have a strong aversion to military conflict. I don't think that Japan will go nuclear unless Japan is pushed into a corner. Therefore, I think most strategists from China, Korea, and outside would say that it would be a mistake for any country in the region to push Japan to the point where they went nuclear. But the purpose of discussions like this is for us to broaden our range of options that we consider and recognize that the Japanese could do this. They're technically capable of doing it. And if the situation in Northeast Asia were to get unstable and the U.S. were to play a significantly smaller role in providing security in the region, I think there is every chance that Japan would go nuclear. I will also say that there used to be the old line in Europe that the French loved Germany so much that they wanted two of them. The same thing is true about both China and Japan of Korea. The Chinese love Korea so much they want to have two Koreas. The Chinese don't want Korea reunified unless it's a pro-Chinese reunified Korea. The Japanese certainly don't want a reunified Korea if it's a pro-Chinese Korea. So that means that the question then is, what are the prospects for reunification, given that China is still the largest supplier of food and the largest supplier of oil, et cetera, for North Korea? I think China has played a very constructive role in the six-party talks. In my last trip to China 2 weeks ago, I met with the top Chinese negotiator on this, and I was very impressed with how she portrayed the long-term Chinese concerns. The Chinese do not want a nuclear war on the Korean Peninsula. They don't want nuclear proliferation. They don't want hundreds of thousands or millions of Koreans streaming across their borders. So they have a direct security investment or interest in stability on the Korean Peninsula. Similarly, they don't want American troops on the Yalu. They had that under MacArthur, and they don't see that as a desirable result. So a reunified Korea that was pro-Western would not be attractive to China, and I don't think the Chinese would favor that. So if you were asking me to predict, is Korea going to be reunified, I would say it may be, but not anytime soon. And I think that for those reasons, you're going to see the same basic states and some of the same basic strategic choices in Northeast Asia that you saw a decade ago. The real question is whether China and Japan can directly resolve things like oil development in the East China Sea. Can they reach some kind of confidence-building measures, et cetera. All of these are really difficult to work out. If you remember, there was a cottage industry in the United States starting in the 60s and going into the 80s, dealing with arms control negotiations with the Soviet Union. And I mean, literally people made careers out of mastering throw weights and, radiuses of different weapons capabilities. All of that are things that the Chinese and the Japanese need to start discussing themselves.